Worldnet presents Dialogue, an unrehearsed televised exchange of ideas. Now, from our studios in Washington, D.C., here is your moderator, Atif Abdelgawad. Hello, and welcome to Worldnet's Dialogue. Earlier this year, retreating Iraqi troops set fire to the vast oil well fields in Kuwait. It was first predicted that these oil well fires would burn for several years. However, on November 6th, the last of the fires was extinguished. Experts are continuing the task of determining the damages from this man-made disaster.
The last of Kuwait's oil well fires is out. Sheikh Jabir al-Ahmad al-Sabah hit the remote control switch, capping the flaming structure. The ceremony was staged by relighting the well extinguished earlier so the emir could put it out again. Workers from 16 nations who cooperated in the firefighting effort participated in the ceremony. It represented the end of a 9-month battle to undo the diabolical work of Saddam Hussein's retreating forces last February. They set afire or damaged 732 wells in the Kuwaiti oil fields. In addition to the financial cost of over $2 billion to fight the flames, the total cost of the environmental damages has yet to be fully assessed. 27 firefighting teams cooperated to bring the flames under control. The men, earning as much as $1,000 a day, worked in intense heat and danger. The teams celebrated the end of the battle. The only smoke came from their cooking fires.
Everyone's just happy to have accomplished it, and safely, no injuries, no accidents, and say that's a job well done. We're ready to go on to the next one.
Kuwait's oil production has already climbed back to 400,000 barrels a day. By the end of next year, that production is expected to reach 1.5 million.
The battle against the raging oil well fires was over sooner than anticipated, but assessing the long-term damage to the environment may take some time. Today, for our international audiences and participants in Doha, Tehran, and Cairo, we will discuss the environmental impact of the Gulf War oil spill. We are pleased to welcome once again to Worldnet Dr. Farouk El-Baz, founding director of the Center for Remote Sensing at Boston University. He is also a former science advisor to the late Egyptian President Anwar Sadat. In May of this year, Dr. El-Baz presented his assessment of the environmental damage to the Gulf region to the Third World Academy of Science at the United Nations. Dr. Farouk El-Baz, welcome back to Worldnet's Dialogue. Let's begin our dialogue and begin with Doha. Doctor in Doha, please go ahead with your question. Dr. Farouk? Hello. It's a good opportunity to talk to you again. Waddah Aqili, the question is from Qatar University. After 9 months or more for the disaster and what it caused in terms of damages, was it your opinion that the concerned authorities concerning the move of the oil spill could they have come to a clear picture which would be helpful to us for future pollution? How do you view it after the information has been received? And if we are to put this jigsaw puzzle together in a larger picture, a clearer picture. Thank you.
Hello, Brother Waddah. As a matter of fact, the information which we have collected about the oil spill and its movement in the Gulf area is so few. First of all, we did not know in the start all the places from which the oil spilled in the Gulf water. Secondly, there was no means or modality to know the quantity of oil that has been spilled. Thirdly, there were no means or ways to know the trend or the direction of the movement of all the oil spilled in the Gulf waters. For these three reasons, we could not really and actually know the quantity of oil and how it was spilled in the waters and how it has gone to the bottom. So for various reasons, the scientific knowledge that we have in the start of the pollution, which was initiated during the war, and there were no means to scientists to investigate what has taken place as a reason of the war. This, of course, couldn't give us the chance to all scientists, because I know that our brothers in Saudi Arabia are working hard, and our brothers in Qatar as well are carrying out good studies about waters around Qatar and the oil that has arrived to the eastern part of Qatar, as well in Saudi Arabia, what they have done in Dahran, Dammam, and Jubail, and all such places. There are gigantic amounts of oil that have arrived to the eastern shores of Saudi Arabia. Other quantities of oil have arrived to the bottom of the Gulf. All these things are not well known by scientists, because there are science of the United Nations or different universities and research institutes, but the information which we need is not available so far in order that we can know how much oil has been spilled, its directions, and what is the quantity that's still overflowing the water, and what's the amount that has spilled to the bottom, and all other information. Our brother scientists who are trying to make certain research couldn't go to the waters of the Gulf because there are certain scares of certain mines that might be there up till now. But we have already known that as a result of the oil spill in the Gulf water in 1983, and the resultant environmental damages that have taken place, and they will also have their effect later as a result of the Gulf War. And thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Waddah in Doha. Now to Dahran. Gentlemen in Dahran, please go ahead with your question. The Mohammed Bakr Amin, the University of Dr. King Fahd. Hello, Dr. Farouk. I have some remarks concerning the questions that has been directed to you from Doha. In fact, since the crisis began in January, towards the end of January, we have been in contact with different world organizations in order to look into how to combat the oil spill or the oil that has been spilled. Until now, we are working on this, and we have some information, a lot of information, concerning all points that have been asked by Dr. Waddah in Doha. The places, the amount, how to follow it, and the type of oil, how it spreads on the shores of Saudi Arabia. The petroleum reached Ahmadi, Abu Bakr ports, and the tankers that was there, and we began analyzing to know the source, amount, and type of petroleum. And there are other means that we have used. We have been working on this for almost 10 to 12 years. We have used different methods, and we have followed this spill on a daily basis, and we used to get information on the weather from the weather department in Saudi Arabia and also in America and other organizations, so that we can determine the direction of the oil spill. In fact, the oil that was spilled has a bigger amount than ever been spilled in the world before. The areas began from Kuwait, Al-Khabzi, and continued to Abu Ali. The geographical nature of Abu Ali is considered as a cap. It was on the way, and it stopped the oil spill from spreading to other areas. This is considered a very rich environment for marine life. These are some of the remarks. The question is, what is your anticipation or expectation of the negative effect on the long-term negative effect on the environment? 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, or what?
Thank you for your clarifications, and I am quite aware of what is going on in the eastern region of Saudi Arabia, and I have seen myself the good results that have ensued thereupon, as well as brothers Abdul Barr Al-Ghain and brother Dr. Abdullah El-Baz, who have briefed me about the information that has been already mentioned. And it's an honor for us that our brothers in Saudi Arabia have done such an excellent job. As regards the impact on wildlife, there are some points. Our brothers, the marine science, when we were talking about them for the environmental effects of such a spill, they said, their answer was that the oil drops as a result of the fires in the oil wells when they descend on the surface of the Gulf. It makes a certain layer which hinders the arrival of the sunbeams to wildlife and birds. These minute wildlife is the main food of small fish, and then the small fish is a feed for big fish, and so on and so forth. Hence, there is an impact on the first cycle of marine life in this area. Secondly, some of the oil, after being evaporated, as well as such as gasoline compounds, a part of it goes to the bottom and lays over there. Such sticky oil arrives to the bottom. It prohibits life in the areas in which it spills. So if there is an area in which shrimp is developing, is going to kill all the shrimp in that area. And regarding your question, if this is going to be for some years or some tens of years, as from the point of view of marine science, it might take tens of years or dozens of years, because this heavy oil, when it goes to the bottom of the Gulf, it kills all wildlife on the bottom. So this means that the oil spill in the Gulf, in the Nowruz well in 1983, still has its effect in the wildlife in the Gulf up till now. So this means that the oil spill that has spilled in 1991 might have its effect or impact for tens of years at the least. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Amin in Tehran. And now to Cairo. Please, gentleman in Cairo, please go ahead. Doctor. Farouk, hello from Cairo. I am Engineer Yusuf Madhar, Undersecretary of the Ministry of Industry. We have met a short while ago, but I'm glad we are meeting again. My question goes back in time. I would like to ask concerning the main numbers. Is it known how once a ton of oil spreads on oil, and how fast with the range of its sinking to the bottom, the first meter, the second meter, what are the characteristics of the spreading of oil in water from a scientific point of view? Maybe you could tell us some information about a certain amount of oil. How does it move? How fast does it move on the surface and on the bottom? Thank you.
Dr. Yusuf Mazhar is speaking in the language of an accurate engineer who knows his information quite well, and I'm proud of him. All these matters depend on the place where you take it. If we take 1 ton of oil and it spills in a certain waters, the temperature of this water has its effect. The currents have their effect. The winds have their effect, as well as the depth of the place where the spill was. In addition to the fact that the quality of the oil itself might have its effect as well, because there is the white crude in Saudi Arabia, which has certain characteristics different from other oils. So every kind of oil that is spilled has its own means, and any part of water has its effect on this oil spill in different manners. In all cases, when oil spills on the water, the layer becomes thinner. If it is thick, and then it becomes thinner because it spreads on the surface of the water. Then if there are currents, if they are swift, they will take this part in their direction. The wind might go with the current of water or against it, and of course this has its effect on this spread of this spill. In the Gulf area, in most times of the world, go in the same direction of the water currents because it goes anti-clock in anti-clock system. That's in most of the year. All these considerations should have been taken into account because the place where the pollution has taken place should be well known. So if we know that the oil that spilled in the Gulf waters, as mentioned from Khafji and Bakr port, arrived to Saudi Arabia, it took certain weeks to go to Saudi Arabia, and it was spreading to a large extent. A part of it remained on the surface of the water, and another part has sunk to the bottom. We cannot know exactly how the amounts are. This is unknown up till now. So when Dr. Mazhar says when a ton of oil is spilled in the waters, we cannot give an answer. It should have been taken on case-by-case basis. And we don't have enough scientific information that has been collected during this transaction to let us know what are the results. Unless our brothers at Malik Fahd University have certain comments, or they can add to the question that has been already raised right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mazhar in Cairo. Now we go back to the participants in Doha. Gentlemen, please go ahead with your question. Dr. Khalid Al-Hajari from Qatar University. The Gulf area has a strategic and economic importance, but it did not get enough attention from the environmental aspect, in spite of its importance. Concerning the dependency on the Gulf water for drinking water, the pollution is not only due to oil spills that have been deliberately done, but also because of the tankers that spills water that is polluted with oil. The hydrocarbon concentration in the Gulf area is very high. It is the highest in the world. The question is, what is the concentration of hydrocarbon after which the drinking water would be bad? Because, as you know, in the Gulf we do depend on the water of the Gulf to sweeten the water of the Gulf and drink that. When does that become dangerous for human health?
Brother Khalid, I agree with you in what you said, because I have known that the waters in the Arab Gulf has the highest rate of hydrocarbons because of the tanker movement that's taking place all the time in the Gulf waters, in addition to the fact that the Gulf area is like a closed lake because it's the only outlet through Hormuz Straits. And this is not enough, that water should be changed all the time between Oman Gulf and Arabian Gulf and the Indian Ocean. As a matter of fact, the rate is high, and some of the desalination waters in the Gulf is high, but the specialist scientists in this field say that these rates do not have real damage. I don't know exactly what is the figure which we can say that if the rate arrives to such a figure, it will be harmful to man. But it is said that when oil spills on the surface of the water, particularly in a high temperature area, many of the dangerous components of oil evaporate quickly, and the sticky oil remains, which does not contain harmful components. This is the point that decreases the catastrophe for drinking water and potable water. But there is more dangerous fact in the future, that perhaps in the future the oil that spilled on land in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, that's on the eastern shores of Saudi Arabia, and the oil that has been spilling on land, there are lakes of oil. The dangerous point about these oil spills on land is that there might be certain cracks, and it could arrive to the subterranean water, and it might pollute this subterranean water completely in certain areas. And this is what we are concerned about in the future. And I'm sure that the specialists over there are monitoring this, and they don't let the potable water that is not healthy. And thank you.
Dr. Ahmed Al-Gindi in Qatar University. In fact, there are lack of information concerning the water currents, and especially in the Gulf. Are there international efforts to solve this problem now? Thank you.
This is an important question which gives us an idea about two important factors. The first the Gulf waters as a part of the oceanography of the whole world. It has we have the least possible information about this area. Regrettably enough, we have scientific information about Aqaba Gulf or Suez Gulf more than what's known about the Gulf area, in spite of its importance politically, economically, and from different points of view. There were no research work that have taken place on complementary basis, particularly by international organizations in marine life with our brothers in the area. This calls upon us for two things. First, that Arab scientists in the Gulf area, in the GCC, that's Gulf Cooperation Council, or in the whole area, including Iran and Iraq, there should be a scientific group that cooperates in collecting scientific information in this area to recognize the basics of this area. As you have already said, there is a general idea that the waters in the Gulf is going against the clock, against the system of the clock, and that its movement is very slow. So what happens in other gulfs? The water currents that are coming from north to south, what goes on after that? And are there certain revolving areas inside the big revolving area of currents? And what happens on the shores of Saudi Arabia and what happens on the shores of Iran? We have to know all such information. What about the salinity degrees, temperature degrees, potable water that is desalinated from waters? What is their effect on wildlife and biological life and on fish and so on? As what takes place in Bahrain, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia. All these things are still vague for us from the scientific point of view. So there should be a scientific group of science in the Gulf area to collect this information in concert and in collaboration between them, in addition to inviting other scientists from outside the region, from Egypt, Germany, the United States, to cooperate with our brothers in the Gulf area in order that we can have a complementary group of information about all such matters from the environmental point of view, weather point of view, marine point of view, and this is really important in order that we can understand what takes place in the Gulf area. As has been mentioned by Dr. Mazhar, if 1 ton of oil is spilled in waters, what happens to it and what takes place? We have to know all that regarding the Gulf area. And thank you.
Thank you, Dr. El-Jindi. And before Dr. Hajri, now to Dhahran. A gentleman from Dhahran, please go ahead with your question. As we all know, the coral reefs in the Gulf area is suffering from the high salinity of the water and the drop of temperature in the winter time. Lots of scientists were worried because of the smoke that came out of the oil wells, especially in the winter time this winter. Now that the fires have been put out, do you think the coral reefs have been saved?
This is a good question, and I think, as I have already mentioned, from the general point of view, because I don't have specific information, I think that this is correct. If the black clouds will cover the area for a whole winter, imperatively it will have its impact on the marine area in the Gulf area, particularly the coral reefs. We thank God that all the walls have been extinguished and this black cloud has departed, and there will be no additional effect in the area as a result of this. Hence, what you are thinking of is correct from the general point of view, and I think that it will not have its impact on the coral reefs in the area, and thank you.
I have a comment. In our research institute, we depend on the three axes to determine the direction of the oil. But in fact, I have a question. How do we use remote sensing, because this is your specialty, to know how much oil drops to the bottom? Because this is a very important stage, because it has a lot of danger on marine life. And also, I believe you are going to visit the area in February. And how could we have the spaceship orbiting Earth, covering this area at that time, be helpful to us?
This is an excellent question, because the remote sensing, which could measure the quantity of oil that is spilled on the surface of the water, is quite useful in order that we know the places where the spill has taken place. And of course, it depends on the air currents and winds and all items that I have already mentioned. As our brother has already said, that the best means to know that is that there should be a boat on location which can have a registration of the temperature, the oil spill on the surface, where there will be a space ship that will collect the information or photographs, particularly the temperature of the area. And I don't think that there is a coordination nowadays to collect all such data, but marine scientists say that this is extremely important. If it will not take place by a spaceship, it should take place by aircrafts, as an aircraft of Saudi forces or Kuwaiti forces, where the aircraft will try to collect all such information on the surface. But as for the amounts that have sunk to the bottom of the Gulf, it either has arrived to shallow areas, and it couldn't be studied accordingly because it decreases the reflection of the sun rays, and the area becomes more bleak or more dark, and then decreasing the reaction of the sun rays. But I think that there are certain cameras that could take place under the water, which could be set on the ship that's going, and the camera is photographing all the time to know what is the quantity of the oil that has sunk in the bottom or on the coral reefs or in shallow areas. All this information has to be collected, and our brother said that they have arithmetical models. Of course, they are important in Saudi Arabia, but it cannot be wholly dependable unless the scientific information regarding the area itself should be collected in order that they will sustain the arithmetic models in order that the results will be identical. And thank you so much.
Dr. Farouk, Muhammad Amin, one of the things that has a negative effect on the citizens of the area is the smoke clouds. The pollutants that are in those clouds have a bad effect on human beings. Could we use remote sensing in order to know the amounts of pollutants that are in the smoke clouds. Also, the other part of the question, could we use remote sensing in order to know the areas in the world where there is a high temperature and how to predict disasters, natural disasters, so that we can be prepared to deal with it before it begins. Thank you.
Another good question. The first part of the question, which says, can we know the quality of the smoke or the pollutants that are existing over there? As a matter of fact, we cannot know exactly the quality of the smoke or the pollutants hanging in the air, but we can know its quantity and the directions they take, their spread. As a matter of fact, nowadays, as a result of the Gulf War, though all the oil wells have been extinguished, but still there is a point which we have to take into consideration. As a result of the war on the surface of the desert, many areas of thin soil have been exposed to erosion, and this will add to a gigantic amount of pollutants in the air, particularly in the season of in which the wind is higher and faster. It takes certain parts of the soil that has been eroded. The wind will take these soil pollutants and spread them as it has been spreading smoke and oil during the oil wells. And this could be seen by remote sensing, because the dust is almost like smoke, though it's not of the same color, but we can know its directions and the directions it takes in spread, as sandstorms, for example. As regards the second part of the question, we can know the change of temperatures and all what we have heard by scientists in the weather conditions which change, that there is an increase on the planet. All the assessments of temperature on the shore of oceans and weather changes that take place on Earth have been received by the photographs of satellites and remote sensing. So the satellites of NOAA assess the temperatures on the oceans in general, as well as the quantity of chlorophyll that's existent in different parts as a result of different temperatures. As well, the meteorological satellites assess the temperature on land and not on the oceans. So in order that we know the movements of winds, through that we can know the changes that take place in the weather and climate in the whole world or in different parts of the world, and this will give us the chance to forecast certain calamities that might take place in a certain area, such as floods or desertification as a result of scarcity of rains or whatever. These are things that we can know easily through remote sensing means, and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Al-Amin, and gentlemen in Dhahran. Now to Cairo once more. Gentlemen in Cairo, please go ahead with the question. Dr. Farouk, my name is Amr Adib, and I am an editor in Today's World. In spite of the satellites, remote sensing, and so on. How come that the oil spill is such a big problem? We would like to know, is there anything in the future that would prevent the disastrous effect of these spills? If there are, please explain to us.
Thank you, Brother Amr. When we send spaceships to Mars and the Moon, this means that we can solve all problems on our planet. As a matter of fact, there are certain problems which we do not know exactly, or we don't know their dimensions. Let us suppose, for example, that there is a certain oil spill in a certain area, and we could know that place from satellites, photographs. If this spill is approaching the shore, we have to protect this shore from this oil spill. This is the start. We can collect all the oil in a certain place, and then we have taken it off and get rid of it. Of course, this takes time, it needs technology, and it needs full planning to take all the steps that have to be taken. All such steps have taken place already. As we said, the Jubail industrial area and the desalination stations or pumping stations to be used in plants, there are enormous amounts of Gulf waters that are used for desalination to provide the plants with potable water. Though the amount it draws from water, from the Gulf waters is enormous, it goes clean after being desalinated in spite of the pollution that's there in the Gulf. In other words, if there are certain oil spills which are there still in the Gulf, does not mean that we cannot overcome that, but we hope that scientifically we can get rid of this more speedily and know the amount of oil more easily and as early as possible to get rid of it as soon as we can. So we can say again, if there is certain oil spill, this does not mean that we cannot get rid of it. As a matter of fact, the Saudis have taken care of that efficiently and have already protected the areas that has to be protected, and thank you.
Mohammed Al-Husseini, Egyptian television. After putting out the fire of the Kuwait oil wells, would the bad effects be located in the Gulf, or is it going to expand, and how much damage will it occur elsewhere?
Thank you, Brother Mohammed. There are 2 points which we are discussing. First, when all fire wells were extinguished, there will be no additional harms of these fires. Of course, there are certain people, plants, and animals that have been affected by these fires during the past months, but there will be no additional effect after the extinction of the fire wells. The things that might have an additional effect are 2 things. First, the oil spilled in the waters of the Gulf and on the shore and in the desert of Kuwait, because in Kuwait we have lakes of oil in Kuwait around the wells that have been extinguished, and even other wells which were not fired have also such oil lakes around them. And of course, oil is spilled as long as there are certain amounts of this. So almost 1/4 or 1/3 of the whole surface of Kuwait is covered either by oil or certain pollutants as a result of the fires. This is the result of the impact on the desert and in the desert waters. Still in Qatar, they are still suffering from the arrival of oil on their shores, as well as in Abu Dhabi, Bahrain, Kuwait, and other areas. Hence, there is a certain quantity of oil of spilt oil in the Gulf, and it has its harmful effects. Secondly, the harms that will result upon the destroying the natural surface of the desert and the position of soil that has been exposed to wind. If we think that this will lead to sand storms as well as new sand dunes that will be formed, that will have its effect on streets, airports, and different areas. So there are certain harms that have taken place as a result of the Gulf War, which will take longer time. So we have to know all their dimensions in order that we can avoid their danger as much as we can. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed and Mr. Amr Adi before that. Now back to Doha. Gentleman in Doha, please go ahead. It seems the gentleman in Doha did not hear us. Thanks. And now we go back to Dahran. Gentleman in Dahran, please go ahead with the question. Or we go back perhaps to Doha one more time. Dr. Farouk, my question concerns in light of the remote sensing, and we know that the American Lamsat and there is a French system also. We can analyze 10 meters. We know, you know, that it has limitations, and this might not be suitable to follow oil spills or what happened in terms of oil pollution, but such spills had been affected by winds and other elements. With regard to organizations in America, do we expect in the future that would have a better ability to analyze?
Our brother doctor, this is a difficult question because the limitations of analysis has put a limit to civil work, because if we let or allow the geologists or marine scientists will be allowed for more research, there might be clashing with certain military applications, and they will not be circulated. Hence, we have started in space projects. We had only 100 meters as a minimum. Then we have been degrading up till 85, up till 10. And they say that 10 meters is quite enough. If we are accurate in the photo for 10 meters, we can say that the satellite photographs cannot give us all the components and the minute details on the Earth. There should be an eyeball look from aircrafts, because spaceships have their own job, and photos from aircrafts have certain uses, as well as field information also should also have be taken into consideration. I don't think at the time being that there is any possibility that the accuracy of satellite photographs could decrease from 10 meters to 5 or 1, because this is the limit that has been agreed upon for civil officers that cannot have more accurate photos from these photos. Because in this case, military officials have to go through them and give us what we can, and they deprive us of what is military from their own point of view. So as civil scientists, 10 meters is enough for most uses for geology, agriculture, and so on and so forth, and it's good for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Doha. Now we go back to Dhahran. Gentlemen in Dhahran, please go ahead. Dr. Farouk, Muhammad Bakr Amin, I have several questions before me. I would like to pose it to you in points, and I hope you would answer. What is the negative effect of the pollution on human health now and in the future? What is the effect of the subterranean water, and is there the possibility for pollution of subterranean water? Remote sensing and LAMSAT, can it possibly tell the difference between sands on the shore that has been polluted with oil? We have further questions, if you will, please.
Thanks, Dr. Mohammed. They are good questions and based on scientific facts. As regards the effects of smoke within the framework in which we are talking, there is no physician. So we have to speak conservatively. But about all what I have listened to from our brothers, when any strange component gets into the lungs with air, if it stays in the lungs, it might have harmful effects, and it might lead to cancer or ulcers in the lungs. As a matter of fact, our brothers concerned with environment in Kuwait have shown me certain photos of cattle in which the lungs had certain components in their lungs, and it was harmful to them. The physicians in Kuwait said that while the smoke was there, a high rate of people that are affected by asthma, for example, or pneumonia, have been affected by that. Of course, this was bad as a result of the smoke of the fires has been taking place. We thank God that it has come to an end, and there will be no additional effect of this harm either to man or to animals. Secondly, as for the subterranean water, I feel personally that we have to carry out a certain study about the possibilities of the spill of this oil to subterranean water, which is close to the surface, which is used by Bedouins in different areas. And if there are certain cracks in the mountains that will take this spill to other regions, so there will be a possibility that will be a pollution in a large area. So we have to carry out research work in this particular field. And this is a problem which is more keen in Kuwait than in Saudi Arabia, because in Saudi Arabia the effect was less, but in Kuwait, as a result of the quick spill of oil, it has been on the surface of the desert. As to know the sands that are covered by a certain quantity of oil, if we compare them to sand that has not been affected by oil, it's an easy matter, because oil can hinder the reflection of sun rays, and we could identify it from its color. And if we can take the spectrum of colors in a certain area, we can know that by the eyeball. And I think that there is a means that will provide us with this. We can take a photo for a certain area as a shore of Saudi Arabia before the oil spill, and we can take a photo of the same area after the oil spill, and then we give them to the computer to give us the difference between the components in the same area. So this is a means which I think will be easy and simple to know the areas in which the dust has been affected by the spilled oil. And thank you.
Dr. Farouk, once again, Yusuf Madhan from Cairo. Perhaps this question is in terms of application more than scientific. We have seen the largest disaster before the Gulf, which was the Valdez oil in Alaska, in spite of the fact that it is a small tanker and the oil that was spilled does not match anything that has happened in the Gulf. We have seen cooperation under these inordinary circumstances. We have seen the oil spill being contained. We have seen different apparatuses, how to withdraw the oil, and a lot of machinery that even the Coast Guard interfered with this. And there was a huge campaign where 1,000 volunteers wanted to wash the shores. So far in the Gulf, we have not seen such efforts that matches that which happened in Alaska taking place. Is it that we were not prepared? Why is it that we have not seen such cooperation in order to deal with the Gulf area? We would like to prepare ourselves for the future because no one has talked about the economic effects. Such effects were huge, and perhaps some numbers could demonstrate how disastrous the situation was. Thank you.
Dr. Yusuf, this is also important point, because the difference between these two cases is quite large. As you have been talking about Exxon Valdez, the bay in which there was spill is open, wide, and the water is changing all the time. So the danger on the Exxon Valdez is much less than the oil spill in the Gulf. At the same time, what has taken place in the Gulf was during a war, whereas what has taken place in the Exxon Valdez was a result of a certain corporation, and it was responsible for that, and it could have been dealt with immediately. But in the Gulf, it was not possible to deal with it immediately because there was the war. So, as you have already said, there are certain things which we have to know regarding the cooperation and the concerted efforts that have to take place in this particular field. And thank you.
Dr. El-Baz, unfortunately, that's all the time we have. I would like to thank you for joining us today. I would also like to thank our participants in Doha, Dhahran, and Cairo. In Washington, I'm Atef Abdelgawad from Worldnet's Dialogue.